Welcome to the Developing Leaders series. My name is Miriam McLemore, former corporate CIO at the Coca-Cola Company and now enterprise strategist with AWS, where I partner with leaders globally to enable business transformation. We have invited leaders from around the world and across industries to share their insights on leadership, vision, strategy, and people development. Charlie, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thanks for asking.
I would like to start our conversation today about how you select and identify new leaders in your organization.
So there's two answers to that. There's one, how does the organization do it? And then how do I do it? So the organization have been paying particular attention to this over recent years. Yeah. We've gone through a process whereby we had, if you like, a sheep dip process, a leadership development program that pretended that every leader was kind of a template and you could kind of cookie cutter them out. Okay. And that didn't work terribly well. So we've moved into a much more individual and personalized leadership development program, whereby essentially we use a succession plan to look at two things really. So we're looking to succeed the person, but we're also looking to succeed the role. And sometimes those two things are different because at senior leadership level, you obviously make a contribution through the role that you've got, but also the person that you are. So we believe that one of the mistakes that we made was trying to do both at the same time. So now we've separated those two things and we look at leaders and we develop on one or both of those spectrums. So we've got people that, for example, aren't in technology, but we're managing them into potentially my role, CIO role. And equally, we've got people that we know are great people, but we're not quite so sure where they may fit in the future leadership structure. So that's the commercial answer, if you like, the corporate answer. On a personal basis, I think it's all about giving people clear accountabilities, clear outcomes, and largely letting them get on with it within guardrails. So I find it very difficult. I'm a detailed kind of person. I have a tendency to be all over somebody and micromanage, but I've learned over the years that people really only thrive when you give them the opportunity to make a few mistakes within boundaries.
Right. So are there some programs that you have where people gain the experience that you're looking for them to gain?
Yes, so part of our structured leadership development program attempts to identify the kind of experience that people need. Sometimes that's inside the organization and sometimes that's outside of the organization. Right. Sometimes it's in form of academic development or other kinds of experience. We make great use of the third sector, so we're very active in areas like STEM development for other organizations, and we do a lot of work within other local organizations in our area. So it may be, for example, that somebody's experience development might be to go and sit on a board of governors at a school, for example. So all manner of ways, but all tailored to the individual.
And then how do you inspire the team and your leaders for the business that you're in and get them really engaged?
Yeah, okay. So there's unfortunately another eclectic answer. So my organization really does three things. So we do research. We're a world-leading researching organization. We do forecasts and predictions operationally, and we're a part of UK government. So again, it depends on the person, which is one of the things here. So you almost do it three different ways because inspiration looks different in those three domains. Certainly, I'm not on the academic side, but those that are seek to inspire, for example, pretty much university. So writing high quality papers, being involved in the right kind of international forums, making sure that our voice is seen as a voice of influence globally, all those kinds of things matter. In the kind of more business sense, still very much a culture of exemplars, of examples, particularly relevant, for example, in inclusion and diversity, where we currently got a problem because we recognise that we've got tons of latent talent and potential in quite a well-represented gender cohort at lower levels of the organisation, but we don't have that higher levels of the organisation. So we're working really hard to make sure those people in the lower and the middle range of the organisation have an example to look up to. So gender is a particularly challenging part of that for us right now.
Right, and you're kind of touching on people that are mentors or leaders for the organization. Are there mentors or leaders that you've looked up to that were helpful to you?
Yeah, the organisation has a really healthy culture of mentors and coaches, and at a senior level, you're encouraged, which means that it's part of your personal objectives, of course. You're encouraged to do quite a lot of that, and indeed I do. When I came into the organisation, I came in from the private sector into quite a high position already at head level, as we call it, inside the organisation. And so I found it quite difficult to adjust. It was the first time for me in the public sector. It was the first time in the weather and climate industry. And it was the first time in academia, so all those things were new to me. So despite having if you like, a journeyman-like rite of passage on the technology side, I didn't have that on the cultural side. So my mentor was Dame Professor Julia Slingo, who was our chief scientist at the time, and she was fantastic because she helped me to overcome my own, if you like, areas of difference to the organisation. I certainly wasn't a clone, if you like. I presented my own share of diversity, given the background that I come from. Typically, people in our organisation have come from the scientific domain or the government domain, and I hadn't come from either. So Julia helped me in a whole plethora of ways to overcome, if you like, often my own fears, and develop the skills I needed to progress and ultimately get a operating board director's role.
Wow. Now, and it sounds like diversity of thought as well as diversity of gender are important criteria for the organization.
I mean, look, we'll never have a monoculture, and we'll never have a monoculture for the fact that we undertake some quite different, identifiable and diverse missions. We have a unifying mission, and that's to be at the forefront of science and research to save lives and property and enhance well-being. That we can all live with that as an organisational vision. But it does break down quite quickly into a cohort of scientists and researchers, a cohort of more applied science and operational people, and obviously in my case some world-class engineering. Diversity is kind of intrinsic in the organisation, and we absolutely celebrate it. I mean, I personally am a big champion for diversity and the value that it brings to an organisation. We actively have policies and strategies that make sure that we're not developing in a monoculture. It's very, very easy to look at the people around you, particularly in a world-leading or successful organisation, and think that good looks like more people that look just like the people you've already got, and that can be a dangerous road. So,
yeah. That evolution to that future requires experimentation, and as a result of experimentation, often failure. How does your organization think about failure?
We're learning to become more comfortable with it, if I'm being honest. Again, the science that we're predominantly there to do, kind of failure is intrinsic in a structured way. So the whole point of science is you create a hypothesis, you test it against the data, you make predictions, and you kind of square that triangle, you run through, you iterate that triangle. So that's, as you can probably tell, a well-rehearsed pattern for me to say, well, why would technology be any different? So we seek to, if you like, point to the scientific method and say, look, this is very much what we're doing in technology. We have some hypotheses. We can't necessarily prove them with the same rigor that you would do in the science domain, but nonetheless we have some hypotheses or ideas of how to make things work. We'll then run experiments that we tend to put into the agile and the DevOps kind of language. We'll see if they work, and then we'll be evidence-based to drive our future. So to some extent, I'm trying to set up the organisation with a higher tolerance of making some mistakes in this domain, which the culture accepts in the science domain. So it's just a question of getting the flip over to actually operational technology needs to work the same way. Yeah,
it sounds like the opportunity is there. To make that change.
Yeah, I've got the excuse, absolutely. So, we make mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. What you try and do, of course, is recognise those mistakes and expect them to happen in such a way that you can be evidence-led, be data-led. Yes, this isn't going the way that we planned or forecast, and be able to stop things or go back and try again with a different method. And we're getting much, much better at that.
So tell me about the technology trends that you see emerging.
Okay, for the Met Office, that's really interesting, of course, because our technology mission is to provide world-class technology to support world-leading science. So there's an expectation, and the scale is very, very large in my domain. So we're operating today 3 of the 50 world's largest supercomputers. Right now, an on-premise and self-delivered model is the right way to do that. And we're very much looking towards public cloud for the kind of, if you like, exploitation in doing useful things with those simulations. That said, look, there's a lot of buzzwords out there, from digital to cloud to this, that, and the other. I'm a bit of a cynic about all those words. At the kind of scale that we're operating at, and encouraged really by our relationship with AWS, we talk very much in the primitives of IT. At the end of the day, IT can be broken down into, you can compute things, you can store things in memory, you can store things in longer term storage, and you can move things around. And at the scale that we operate it at, and the kind of reach that we've got, the kinds of conversations that we have at enterprise level with Amazon really talk about those things much more than stacks. So building traditional stacks just isn't where we're at anymore.
Right.
It's really down to talking about those primitives and how we use them.
Yeah, it's an exciting world that you're in. Well, Charlie, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you.